Dr. Ibrahim has just published this book with Baker Academic, A Concise Guide to the Quran, Answering 30 Critical Questions. Ayman, I congratulate you on the publication of this book and welcome you to this discussion today.
Thank you so much. I look forward to it.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, not only your upbringing in Egypt, but also how you got into the study, the academic study of Islam and the Quran.
Growing up in Egypt, I was surrounded by Muslims all the time. This is my community in Egypt. And I grew up interacting with many Muslim friends. I became an engineer and worked as an engineer for some time. But my main passion was to be with people and to do more and more understanding of their culture and their religious views. So at some point, as I was working as an engineer, I decided to get a theological degree. And I came to the United States, worked on my master's degree with an emphasis on Islamic studies, because that's the thing that I like to study and wanted to dig deeper in the understanding of Islam and the and Muslims anthropologically. And then got a degree, a PhD in Islamic studies, focusing on Islamic history at Fuller Seminary. And then my wife and I wanted to live and just live in the Middle East. So I got a full ride to do another PhD in Islamic history in the University of Haifa on Mount Carmel, which was something that was really helpful to me to understand more Islam and Islamic history and so forth. That's why, although I am a Christian scholar, my area of expertise is Islam, and particularly Islamic history and Islamic texts. So,
yeah, thank you for that. I love the format of the book, these 30 critical questions. Among other things, it gives kind of a dialogical feel to the text and also helps the reader. You're asking many of the questions that readers themselves will have asked, with things that we might have wondered about. Tell us a little bit about how you decided on that format and how you came up with those questions.
Because of my studies and my degrees, all my encounters were like revolved around academic, very sophisticated books. But I always thought about my students who have no understanding of Islam, no encounter at all with the Quran. What is that? Even I asked my neighbor, what is the Quran in your opinion? He said, isn't this the Bible for Muslims? That's pretty cool, like for him to. Now, the fact is, what drove me to write in that particular structure, I would say my students and my neighbors. Those are the two groups of people who made me think of like a Q&A. And I wanted to stay away from sophisticated writing, as I always do in my academic writing. Not that this book is not academic, it's actually so solid academically.
Right.
But I wanted to make it accessible, and then at the end of each question, I provide the latest scholarly references to help my students and anyone who wants to understand more about the broader discussion of the topic. So I would say that I am indebted to those who helped me think about the Q&A, quick answer to very important questions. As for where I got these questions, I would say from my encounters with people. I've been teaching courses on Islam for the past 10 years. And every now and then I get a new question from my students. So that's how I formed these questions around the history of the Quran and the content of the Quran. Yeah.
Right. Did anything as you were writing, as we both know, sometimes when you're in the process of writing, new insights, new things come up just in the course of writing a book. Did anything happen to surprise you? Any new insights come up as you were writing the book?
I like the question. Actually, I would say no major surprises, but lots of tweaking to make the text easy to read and accessible to those without prior knowledge of Islam and the Muslim culture and such. So basically what I did is, after I formed a lot of questions, I asked friends who are, I call them like readers with some interest in Islam, but without prior education in Islam. They have other fields of education. And I asked them, what would you like to read if there's a book on the Quran? So I got their questions, so I thought about them and I placed them as I discussed several aspects of the Quran. And that's how this whole book was developed. But I wouldn't say there was a surprise, but there were lots of attempts to make the text more readable.
Sure.
So yeah.
It's interesting too, right? Even working on the editorial and or the revision process as well, going back and forth and just thinking about some of these. How do we make this a bit more accessible to the readers? And it really does come across well. I commend you to that for readers who have never studied the history of Islam, who have never opened a Quran before, but think that they know what the Quran is. You do an excellent job here of giving just all of the information that is needed for that essential grasp of the history and the content. I commend you for that.
Thank you. But just to be honest, I also commend the work of Baker. Your team helped me with some of the vocabulary I use, because I could use some sophisticated terms, and then the editors would say, okay, what do you exactly mean by that? So it helped me to make it more understandable, and I'm grateful for your work. So
thank you for that. I'm always pleased to say good words about the team that we have here at Baker, and certainly you worked with some of the best in the industry in getting the book where it needed to be. That's what we do here. So let me ask you this. You alluded to it before as we've chatted here today, but one of the underlying themes of this book is that just among the general populace in the English-speaking world, there is a lack of knowledge about Islam.
Yeah.
It's a complex situation, isn't it? Because many people think they know about Islam and the Quran, but they really do not, in fact, have any working knowledge of our neighbors who are Muslim right next door to us, increasingly so. My question then is, what are specifically some of the gaps in our knowledge that you hope this book fills as readers encounter, many for the very first time, the study in an academic context, the study of the Quran?
I think you're very accurate in terms of describing the general status of understanding about Islam around us, among our neighbors. So what I wanted to discuss in this book is how to adjust some pictures we have about Islam and Muslims and their scripture, because we usually acquire a picture, and this picture is somewhat correct, but most of the time most of the time is not really well informed. So, for example, many people would think that Muhammad wrote the Quran. Wrong.
Sure.
Many people would think that the Quran is a book all about fighting and jihad. That's a word that we keep hearing. Wrong. There is tons of other topics in the Quran that you can actually read about. Many people think that the Quran is impossible to access and it's actually so difficult to have a translation. In fact, that's also wrong because I provide like many ways of accessing resources about the Quran and how Muslims understand it. And this brings me to another misconception that people think that all Muslims are the same. All Muslims believe this particular thing about the Quran. I provide different understandings and different approaches by Muslims to their own scripture, varying from so much committed in terms of conservative views all the way to the views of many self-identified Muslims, but they're still, I would say, progressive in their interaction with their scripture. So these are some things that I'm trying to fill in with my book. And hopefully, if you read this book and you find the resources I refer to in my like bibliography or footnotes, you will understand that the discussion is really good and it can be a starting point for exploring more on the Quran, you know. So
That's a very helpful answer. Thank you for that. In a way, you're combating a lot of the assumptions and presuppositions that many in the English-speaking world have, and then pointing readers to the discussions and to further resources. So it's an invaluable guide. Again, the book is titled A Concise Guide to the Quran, Answering 30 Critical Questions. Ayman, we thank you for your time today. Thank you for the scholarship that you're doing and for this book, and we wish you well.
Thank you so much for your work, and I look forward to more publication with you.
Thank you.